Before our upcoming quiz on two categorical data and two-way tables, I would like to take a moment and go over this recent assignment and make sure that everybody understands the properties that we're studying and the particular answer for this situation. So we have this data from 2012 regarding a survey result from 8 high schools looking at the relationship between what kind of parent smoking situation was happening at home and whether or not the students themselves actually smoked. So you can see the information provided in a two-way table. I also recommended that you take the applet that we've worked with lately and create a two-way table that corresponds with this so that you could have a graph and the proportions that we need to go along with making decisions. And there's some questions down here. We'll go over those shortly. So you can see here going down in the columns is whether the parent smoked or not. So we have neither parent smokes, one parent smokes, and both parents smokes. We think that that variable, that categorical variable, will explain whether or not the student will smoke. So we have students do not smoke or students smoke. Okay, and what we have to do when we're looking at these kind of problems is assume that the data was collected in an appropriate way. And we nicely here can look at the sample size and see that there's a big sample here. So it's more reliable than just a small sample size. And you'll see the total in a second. So we're going to click on this Stapplet and type the data in that you need. I've already done that to save some time. Just remember to recreate this as best as you can with the explanatory variable going down, the response variable going along the side for what you think is happening. You have these plus and minus signs to add certain categories, and then when you're ready to go, hit begin analysis. Okay, so we're going to actually focus on the summary statistics first and look at the totals here for each variable. Now both of these totals are called marginal distribution. So you have a marginal distribution for parent smoking habits and then a marginal distribution for student smoking habits. And then you have the overall total, which we said here was a large number, 5,375. So a very good amount of data collected so we can feel more comfortable with the results. So part A in the question was describe the marginal distribution for parent smoking habits. There's two ways to compare them. You could just look at the overall size. So there were exactly 1,356 parents in the study where, or households in the study where neither parent smoked. 2,239 households where only one of the parents smoked, and 1,780 households where both parents smoked. So you can see they're not all the same size, but they're all a decent size, so we can work with that. And overall, that's out of 5,375 households. So that's the marginal distribution for parent smoking habits. If you wanted these as proportions, what you would do is just take each number and divide it by the overall total. So for neither parent smoking, it would be 1,356 divided by 5,375. And you could do that for each. Okay, they didn't ask for that here, but if they did ask for it as proportions, that's what you would do. Okay, the differences in sizes will come up in a second, again, when we talk about a mosaic plot, but for now we can leave it as that. Okay, part B, pick one conditional distribution to focus on and describe the proportions calculated. So this time they did ask us for the proportions, so we will use the summary statistics there. So based on the explanatory variable, we have three conditional distributions we can choose from. So neither parent smoke in the household, one parent smokes in the household, and both parents smoke in the household. So the reason why we call it a conditional distribution is we are no longer looking at the overall total of 5,375. We are now just looking at the condition that fits the column that we're participating and working with. So most of you chose neither parent smoked. So a way to say that would be, given that neither parent smoked, the proportion that had households where the students also didn't smoke is about 86.1%. Or you could write it as a fraction, 1,168 out of 1,356. Okay, and then for the second a row going across. Given that neither parent smoked in the household, about 13.9% of the students actually did smoke. Okay, or you could write it as a fraction, 188 out of 1,356. So no longer out of the overall total, it's out of the condition that you're describing in the subgroup. Okay, and later on when we talk about probability, when we focus on subtotals like this, we call it conditional probability. So those things are very related in terms of how you say your answer, okay, given I'm only working with this smaller group. All right, and finally, part C, does there appear to be an association between parent smoking habits and student smoking habits? Justify your decision using the graphs produced. So there was a lot of discrepancy with this answer, so I wanted to make sure we particularly went over this. Remember, the easiest form for pretty much anybody, even if they don't know statistics, is the side-by-side bar chart. In this particular case, again, your columns going down are what's making up the x-axis, and the two different categories of students are what make up the bars. So neither students don't smoke, that's your darker blue. Student smoking is your lighter blue. Okay, so you can see here, particularly since the categories are so kind of related in this situation, as the amount of parents that smoked in the household went up, so too did the amount of students that went up. Okay, and that's pretty clear by looking at the graph this way. Okay, if you want to go in terms of looking at the percentages, again, no parents smoking, about 13 or 14% of students actually smoked, and then when both parents in the household did smoke, it went up to about 22.5%. All right, it's the opposite for when students don't smoke. When the parents don't smoke, about 86% also don't smoke, but when both parents smoke, the percentage of students that don't smoke goes down to about 77.5%. Okay, so it's kind of shown here. So it is pretty clear that it's not a huge relationship, but there is a slight relationship or association between the two conditional distributions, or the two categorical variables, I should say. Okay, because of order, this kind of trend isn't always helpful, but in this particular case, it is. If we will look at the segmented bar chart, what you're looking for in this to see if there's an association or relationship is a difference in the bars. And a lot of you talked about how the bars looked relatively similar, and that's why you said that there was no association and there's independence. In this particular case, I would not go along with that. When I bring it back to percentages, you would want these percentages to be really, really close. So this one's 86% and this one's 77.5%. That's a pretty big difference. And especially since we have such a large sample size here, that reduces the variability that we would see in some of the smaller sample size type studies. So even though these are similar, they're not similar enough for me to say that things are independent. Okay, you would want these percentages to be a lot closer. Okay, so this is a segmented bar chart, and if things are a lot closer, say this one was 14% and this one was 15% and this one was 12.9%, then you're in better shape. But when one's 14% and the other one's up to 22, 23%, that's a pretty significant difference at this large sample size. So I would say that there is an association between the parent smoking and their corresponding student smoking. You might argue that it's a small association, but that association is there. Okay, so you can see that there is a clear difference, even though it's a small one. There is a difference here. So hopefully that clarifies things. And I just wanted to go through the mosaic plot one more time. Again, the purpose of converting your segmented bar chart to this form is to visually show people that have a background in statistics that there is a difference in the size in the groups. Okay, so the one parent smoking group was larger than the other two. If you remember to go back down, that had about 2,239 parents in that situation, whereas the neither parent smoking group only had 1,356. So that's a smaller width there. This is the widest width, and then both parents smoking was somewhere in the middle, so that one's kind of in between. So the only difference between the mosaic plot and the segmented bar chart is they show you the differences in the conditional categories based on the width of the bars. Okay, so that hopefully that helps you prepare for your assessment upcoming on 2 categorical variables. And if anything was unclear from this video, please let me know. Thanks again for watching.